out at the weekend. While Chris Farrell, who performed so well off the bench against Scotland, and as well Jack Carty, the Connacht man, capping off a whirlwind 12 months. I don't think he really would have thought 12 months ago that if he was looking a year down the line, he would be starting in a World Cup game for Ireland. Brilliant 12 months for that man. Johnny Sexton, of course, isn't risked. That's why Jack Carty is in. Sexton picked up a thigh injury in the game against Scotland. Neither also is Bundy Aki, after he suffered a head injury. And the other two to drop out there are Andrew Conway and Jordan Larmour, despite both acquitting themselves well the last day. The Irish pack is unchanged. If we do have the picture, we can bring it up on screen there for you as well. Jack Conan was due to start, it seems, but he took studs to his foot in training and is no longer available at the moment for this game. So Rhys Ruddock and Sean Cronin come onto the bench in place of Cronin and Niall Scannell, while Peter O'Mahony takes that place that Jack Conan would have had in the back row. CJ Stander reverting to staying at number 8. So in full they go with Rob Kearney at full back. On the wings you've Keith Earls and Jacob Stockdale, Gary Ringrose and Chris Farrell in the centre, Jack Carty at out half and Conor Murray at scrum half, while in the pack it's Cian Healy, Rory Best and Tadhg Furlong, Ian Henderson and James Ryan, who were brilliant together in the second row the last day, and then Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer and CJ Stander in the back row, with the replacements Sean Cronin, Dave Kilcoyne, Andrew Porter, Tadhg Byrne, Rhys Ruddock, Luke McGrath, Joey Carberry and Jordan Larmour as well. Now we do have some clips to bring you from the Irish press conference this morning. They were speaking about the game. First of all, it's all about Jack Carty really at the moment, capping off that brilliant year for him, as we say, into the Irish starting lineup, picked ahead of Joey Carberry, who's going to get a run off the bench this week. But here's what Conor Murray has to say about Carty, who's been drafted in to replace Johnny Sexton.
He's quite a calm character, Jack, which is good to have outside you. And he's picked up, like anyone who comes into the setup, they're probably, the pressure to learn and step up is on them, and he's responded really well to that, and he's gotten to grips with the way we play and the kind of tactics and the phase calls and what's expected of him, and like I said, that kind of laid back nature has actually kind of aided him, I think, in going into an environment like this and learning off the likes of Johnny and I know Joey's probably younger than him, but he's been around and in the setup for a while. So I'm excited to play with Jack. Like I said, he kind of takes it in his stride, and he's performed really well. Any time he's been given a chance, whether it be in the Six Nations just gone or the summer series, and coming over here and coming on last weekend, he's done really well. So excited to take the field with him.
Yeah, that's what Conor Murray had to say there about Jack Carty, who's come in place of Johnny Sexton this weekend. I can say now we're going to go over to Japan. Owen Sheehan is on the line. Owen is there waiting to speak for us. Owen, you were at the press conference this morning. I suppose the big talking point is Johnny Sexton is going to be rested. It's probably not that big a surprise though, given the knock he took on Sunday, and there are a lot more games to come and a short turnaround as well to the Russia game. But the team news this weekend, 4 changes in total. I think some people maybe were expecting a couple more, but I think maybe with that game against Russia in mind, in the short turnaround in 5 days, that's probably where we're going to see the raft of changes, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. I'd say you're probably correct on that one, Neil. I'd say when one of the changes was going to be Jonathan Sexton, I think that probably lessens the other changes that you can make, because you're taking out the fulcrum of the team, and you do probably need your first choice pack going in front of Jack Carty playing his first World Cup game. But realistically, if we take away all the evidence that we've seen over the last week or so, we still probably would have nailed down Japan as a fairly big encounter for this team anyway. I think Joe Schmidt might have from the outset said he would have started his first choice team, and it is close enough to his first choice team. He could now be in a situation where he could have a hybrid between the A team and the B team over the next couple of weeks, because Johnny Sexton will need to get minutes under his belt. Joe Schmidt was saying today, though, that you could throw him in tomorrow after a huge long layoff and he will be fine. He doesn't actually need that momentum that builds up over games for him to get into top class form. So maybe that's not going to be the case, but I'd imagine now this might work out in their favour. We will see the likes of Sexton, and we will see the likes of Henshaw play big minutes, assuming Henshaw gets fit again, that is, play big minutes before the World Cup quarter-final against, you'd imagine, South Africa at this point. Yeah, and it probably links in, Joe Schmidt saying that Sexton probably doesn't need the minutes. Two guys that probably do need the minutes in the grand scheme of things, as well as Jordan Larmour and Andrew Conway played. Keith Earls hasn't really played much at all this summer so far. And even though if he wanted to stick with Andrew Conway again, he probably just needs to get on the pitch, Keith Earls, and just get a bit of game time in his legs. And similar enough as well with Rob Kearney, who obviously would have been locked down to start last week. Yeah, for sure. I think it's particularly true in Keith Earls' case, really, a lack of Test minutes in his legs at the moment. Obviously, Rob Kearney, a little bit different, but still, it's good to see him starting this weekend. It's such a shame, really, from Larmour and Conway's point of view. They couldn't have done much more last weekend to cement their place. And really, it's almost audition time now for Earls and Kearney all over again. You'd imagine for Kearney, he probably has his place nailed down. Joe Schmidt loves him. He's had a very good run in the green jersey at fullback, so it's going to be hard for Larmour to get back in there. So you do wonder if there's just auditions happening for the wing spots at this point. Who knows though, somebody could have a disaster of a game on Saturday and things could change entirely, but it is a little bit harsh on Larmour and Conway. The flip side of it is that if they did play this weekend, then is that a situation where they're the men to take Ireland through the early stages of the competition and then step up Keith Earls and step up Rob Kearney to slot into the team? So it seems that the gap is closed between those players quite a bit at this moment. And just thinking about it there a moment ago, there's no real player in this Ireland squad at the moment that if they donned the green jersey to start, you wouldn't really exactly have your head in your hands saying, oh dear God, this is a huge weakness. Even the likes of Jack Carty, you mentioned there, he's had a huge 12 months. It's mad to think that he is going to be starting a World Cup game, but given the form he's shown, how good he was off the bench the other day as well, you don't really have any fear for him. You don't really have any fear for an Ireland team being led by Jack Carty at this point, especially with the pack that starts in front of him.
Yeah, and then the other interesting one I thought was Rory Best, as well as he played against Scotland for a player of his age 80 minutes in that game on Sunday. I was thinking possibly he would have been a forward that would have just, maybe even if they dropped him onto the bench, just to kind of, I suppose, rest the legs for a certain part and give him maybe 20-25 minutes towards the end. But Joe Schmidt sticking with him again in his starting lineup, although Sean Cronin is named on the bench ahead of Niall Scannell, which would probably indicate you're looking probably at least 30-35 minutes maybe out of Sean Cronin this weekend.
You would expect so, Neil, but you do wonder if there's a lack of fitness perhaps from Sean Cronin and Niall Scannell at this point. Are they fully fit? I mean, the option was there really last week. I can't remember what minute Josh van der Fleer gets taken off, but certainly would have thought that Niall Scannell would have been coming on for Rory Best before that moment. They were lucky in the end that he didn't go on so that he could replace Josh van der Fleer instead. But really, I wonder, was he 100% confident in Niall Scannell's fitness? Would he be 100% confident in Sean Cronin's fitness? I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe there is a situation where they need to feel their way into a 100% state of actually being able to play a full test match. So I've got a feeling that the ideal situation would have been, in the context of last week, to play Rory Best for the 80 minutes, then bring in one of the other hookers. But maybe there's been a setback in training. It's just my take. It's just what I see to be going on here, because it doesn't really all add up. When he played the 80 minutes, you thought, well, that's him, definitely not playing next week. But lo and behold, he starts once again. Yeah,
and finally, Owen, then as well, before we leave you go, you were also at Japan's press conference this afternoon where they named their team. 4 changes for them, notably number 8 Amanaki Mafi comes in to replace captain Michael Leach, who's gone to the bench, while Jiwon Koo, second row Luke Thompson, formerly of Blackrock College actually in the All-Ireland League, Luke Thompson many moons ago, and fullback Rohai Yamanaka come in to make their first starts of the tournament. But Jamie Joseph, the Japan head coach, they have been in relatively bullish form, it seemed, at these press conferences. They're not afraid to talk themselves up and say that they're very much here to win, and even continuing on this kind of putting a little bit of pressure on Angus Gardner, the referee, when it comes to scrummaging and things like that at the weekend. They're certainly not afraid of Ireland, I think.
No, I don't think the players are anyway. Joseph, before naming his team today, it's usually what happens is in the press conferences, they name their team and then they start questions. But before that, he said, just before I named the team, I just want to say how big a test this is going to be. Ireland are a brilliant team, etc., etc., etc. And then named his team, almost lessening the expectations. And I'm not sure, was that kind of hitting back at some of this his own players were saying during the week, the bullishness, just to try and lower expectations somewhat. Like I asked about the Kizu comments earlier in the week about Cian Healy scrummaging, and Joseph did say that it was his first time doing media, and that he doesn't really know how to deal with the media just yet because he's a young guy. But he did say that sometimes Ireland are illegal in the scrum. Other than that, not a whole pile of needle, not a whole pile of bombs being dropped in terms of the verbals today. But it was all week kind of a sense of bullishness from Japan that they aren't here to just kind of roll over for Ireland. And perhaps it is a different situation for them this week, where the pressure isn't exactly on them, whereas there was humongous pressure on them last week. It wasn't just pressure from their home fans. There was almost a pressure from the organisers of the tournament, that the reason why Japan versus Russia was the opening game clearly because they wanted Japan to get off to a winning start and that you have the home nation in the tournament. So it would have been a seriously damaging blow to the tournament and to Japan had they lost that. So that pressure isn't exactly on them this week. You mentioned Luke Thompson there, who comes into the team this weekend as well. We'll have a sit down with him on tonight's Off the Ball. The Japan media guy wasn't too happy with me grabbing him after today's press conference, but we got the job done in the end.
Just tell him it's all linked to Ireland. Owen, thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, Neil.
Owen Sheehan there, live from Japan. We'll have Alan Quinlan on in just a couple of moments' time as well. Though first, we're going to play another little clip from this afternoon's press conference, or this morning's press conference, Irish time. Joe Schmidt talking about Peter O'Mahony here, who's back in the starting lineup. He probably was meant to be rested for today, but Jack Conan picking up that injury earlier in the week means O'Mahony is going to be coming in. And Joe Schmidt says here he's absolutely raring to get back on the pitch after having his day ended quite early against Scotland on Sunday.
Yeah, Pete was mad keen to play. He only played, that 25 minutes. And unfortunately, I think we might have got Pete back out there, but we had two HIAs at the same time, and therefore, the communication wasn't as smooth as it normally is. And when you're trying to repeat words back to somebody, it became a little bit difficult for him. He flew through his HIA2 and HIA3, which confirms to us that he didn't have a concussion, that the HIA process is a precautionary process to ensure that anyone who has a suspected concussion is immediately removed from the field. It doesn't mean that they've had a concussion, and in both Bundy and Pete's cases, they flew through HIA2 and HIA3. They are absolutely symptom-free as they were after the match. So, there's no elevated risk, we don't believe. We've got a super medical staff, and that allows us the confidence to have those guys involved if we see fit. We mix and match a little bit there. Obviously, we're delighted with the way Chris played. Gary Ringrose played well. We just think that if we put that back out, it's a good bit of continuity for us, particularly because Bundy wasn't maybe due to play this game anyway, and he's played a lot in the lead-up, so that was kind of part of our thinking.
Yeah, Joe Schmidt there speaking about Peter O'Mahony coming in this weekend in place of Jack Conan. Well, O'Mahony keeping his place really in the team, but Jack Conan was meant to be starting. England 14-0 up at the moment, I should say. Billy Vunipola has gone over for their second try of the afternoon against the USA. So, on my screen there, 30 minutes on the clock in that game. England 14-0 up. George Ford converting that try. Now, Alan Quinlan has joined us for the first time on our Off the Ball Rugby World Cup show. Quinny, you've had a few appearances on Off the Ball on OTBAM, but I think you'll be glad to say now you've made it onto the real thing, the proper World Cup rugby show.
I'm absolutely chuffed, Neil, to get on your show. It's been a lifetime ambition to get on here. So, I'm delighted.
How have you...
Yeah, go ahead.
How have you found things over the last week or so? You've been out there, is it roughly a week or so now?
Yeah, a week today. I landed here last Thursday. A bit chaotic for the first few days. Just trying to get your bearings and surroundings. I landed into Tokyo. Sleep was an issue for a few days. Went to the opening ceremony, watched a few games on Saturday. They were great. And then Sunday was brilliant. I really enjoyed the performance. I think I did the game with Scott Hastings. He didn't enjoy it. But it was good. It was a great start for Ireland. And then we went on our travels up to Kamashi in the eastern part of the main island in Japan here, and that was an incredible few days. Obviously, it finished. The game we were going to was Fiji and Uruguay, and that was yesterday. But Kamashi was hit with a devastating earthquake in 2011 off the coast of Japan, and the whole northeast coastline was hit with a tsunami, and a lot of towns and cities wiped out, and Kamashi was wiped out. And they built a new stadium there, the Kamashi Memorial Stadium. And so it was an incredible few days. And, doing a commentary, Neil, of Fiji and Uruguay, and your rugby, you probably think, it'll be 30, 40 points in it. Fiji were very good against Australia in the first half. They're physically in great shape, you think. They're massive men. They've all this talent. And the contrast then from going from one captain's run on Tuesday to the other captain's run, where you look at the Uruguayan players and you think, without being disrespectful to them, they weren't as big. They looked like they looked physically. No, they had some big guys. Their second rows were big, but they looked, compared to the Fijian side, they looked like the club side, and I feared for them. And I thought, sometimes you're not that enthusiastic about doing those type of games, because believe it or not, a close game is so much easier to do a commentary on. And it just turned out to be the most incredible day with the performance of Uruguay. And I think everybody saw the scenes at the end, against all the odds, really. And it was just an amazing few days, having met the people in Kamashi and just talked to some people, went to the museum there, and stood in a place where there once was a town and now it was just flat, completely flattened. And then the match had culminated in a brilliant, exciting, amazing, against all odds performance from Uruguay to win the game.
Yeah, now hopefully this Saturday we don't have a shock on a similar scale when Japan take on Ireland. Team news is in, obviously, over the last 6 or 8 hours. Not too many changes, just 4 in total. Probably a sign Joe Schmidt is actually taking Japan really seriously. He's treating them probably as seriously as he would have Scotland, with Keith Earls coming back in, Rob Kearney in. And the only real changes being Johnny Sexton, who had a bit of a knock, is kind of stepping out, and similar with Bundyaki as well. Aside from that, it's more or less first choice.
Yeah, it is. And I think I said this last week. I said, I've said it before the tournament for a long time. You just cannot underestimate this Japanese side. Emotionally, they'll be through the roof. They certainly would have targeted either the Irish game or the Scottish game, and hope to win one of those games and cause a big shock like they did in 2015 when they beat South Africa. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, and I think Joe knows it as well, and the Irish boys know it. They're going to come flying out of the blocks, and emotion and passion and intensity sometimes can really unsettle the opposition. Ireland are a better side than them, there's no doubt about that. But they're a very, very dangerous team. And I think picking a side, that the side that Joe has picked, I think reflects the respect he has for him, and him being aware of how dangerous they can be. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And so it's a very strong side. I think it's a pity Johnny Sexton isn't going again. I think he's obviously our first choice fly half. I'd love to see him get a run of a couple of games. He's been very unfortunate with injuries, a lot of injuries in the last couple of years. And he hasn't played a lot of rugby this year. So it's been a slow start for him, and it's a pity. But it's a great opportunity for Jack Carty, and I think he deserves his chance. I thought he was superb in the Welsh games when he was involved there. And he's just grown in confidence. And I've always said this, for any player that gets involved in a Joe Schmidt squad and with those top quality players, you're going to improve and you're going to learn new things. And he seems like it's been a really seamless transition into international rugby for him. So it's a great opportunity, but there's pressure on him. He's got to deliver, and he's got to deal with a lot of pressure, and there'll be a lot of pressure, particularly from that Japanese back row on Saturday, when they'll go after him, they'll try and run at him. And he's got to deal and cope with that. But it's a great opportunity for him. And to have Joey Carberry back in the bench is a real boost as well, because, and I think it's the right thing maybe not to start him. He'll get some game time, and he could start against Fiji or against Russia, or get some more game time. And come the quarterfinals, fingers crossed that we get there, Carberry and Sexton get minutes under their belts, and Ireland will be in a better position.
Yeah, just on Carty there, obviously you were saying that Japan are likely to probably target him given his limited experience at test level. That's probably somewhere where Chris Farrell has to step in and do a bit of a protection job, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You can't totally hide your fly half from his defensive duties. And to be fair, he is a good defender and he gets off the line quickly. And Ireland's line speed was very, very impressive last week. And the danger is this week, Neil, that after that reaching such a high last week, that will they get to the same heights emotionally? That's the challenge for the team, I think, right across the board. And I think for any team, I think you set the tone with your defence, and I think Ireland got to defend really strongly on Saturday. And Carty will have runners coming down that channel, and he's got to put in his tackles. And I think Chris Farrell, in fairness, was superb when he came off the bench last week. He's a big, strong, powerful man, and Gary Ringrose. Those three guys have got to work together in tandem because sometimes they might be down some numbers and they've got to push outwards and cover any kind of runners coming back in the inside. So you want to try and protect your fly half, and that's down to Stander O'Mahony and Josh van der Fleer as well. So whenever they can get inside him and try and protect him as much as you can, but ultimately your fly half has to put in his tackles as well, and he's capable of it. He's a lovely footballer, and I think he's grown confidence. So it's wonderful that he's getting rewarded. And I think I heard Owen on the previous. He's behind a very strong pack. And I would think the challenge for the forwards again is on Saturday is lay that platform and get better and improve and build on last week, build on that momentum, and you get a real good field factor no matter who you're playing if you work hard as a unit. And they've got to be patient as well. I think the key on Saturday is maybe we will expect a really good performance, and we might get frustrated if we don't see that. For me, it's just about being patient because they're going to get incredible pressure from these Japanese guys on Saturday. And as I said, their emotion is going to be through the roof. So right across the board, I think, and Rob Kearney and Keith Earls coming back into the side. Unbelievable experience. Those guys have been around for a long time, and there's a little bit of pressure on them given the way Larmour and Conway played last week. So hopefully they can get a good job done and start the game well.
Would you have been tempted to keep Conway and Larmour in that starting lineup this week, given how well they did, or do Rob Kearney and Keith Earls probably actually just need to get some minutes under their belt?
They need to get minutes under their belt. I think it's a little bit unfair, and they'd love to go out there again because both guys looked like they really enjoyed themselves. And when you have the jersey and you want to hold on to it and try and play every week, all the players are like that, and that's the kind of hunger you want in guys. But they've enough mileage on the clock to deserve and enough credit in the bank, if you like, to deserve their shot. Both of them would have started last week, bar the injuries. They trained midweek and they would have been available for selection if they had trained the earlier part of the week. So they deserve a shot, and I think that's important because if neither of those guys got a game this week, they're getting a bit disgruntled then and they'd be disappointed. And I think after the Russia game, Neil, I think an ideal scenario would be 3 wins and everyone in the squad has played. Jean Klein hasn't got any involvement, hasn't got a chance to put on the boots and be in the 23. He will against Russia. Rhys Ruddock is getting minutes this week. I'm not sure if there's anyone else. Who else needs to... That's probably the whole lot. Joey Carberry's involved. Sean Cronin's involved. So John Ryan, he's the one that probably... Yeah,
John Ryan hasn't featured yet.
So if he... he'll get minutes against Russia. And if you finish up that Russian game with 3 wins, no injuries, and which is wishful thinking, I suppose, maybe you have, because it's very difficult. And if all the squad have played, well, they're in a good place then because people feel part of it then.
Mm-hmm. No changes in the pack. I think unfortunately for Jack Conan, he was probably in line to start this week, but he picked up a foot injury in training. It's probably as bad a time for him to pick up a little knock as possible, because given how CJ Stander in the last probably month or so has really found his form again. We were kind of talking 4 or 5 weeks ago about how Jack Conan might actually be just nudging ahead of Stander in the pecking order, and Stander finally finds his form, and all of a sudden Jack Conan has an injury, and it's kind of a long way back for Conan to get back in ahead of Stander.
It is, but I thought he was superb last week.
Yeah.
I thought he came on for Peter O'Mahony and he had multiple involvements, put in a lot of good tackles, great acceleration with some of his carries as well. So it's very difficult. The 2 Welsh games that he played were his first games of the season, and it takes time. We expect too much of players sometimes. When they get that first game, you think, well, he's got to grab the chance now, and it doesn't always work like that. He was very solid in those 2 games, didn't do anything spectacular. And it takes a couple of matches for people to get that bit of match fitness and sharpness. And he showed that sharpness last week. You know, he has minutes under his belt now, so it's very unfortunate for him. And then, you know, CJ Stander goes and has a stormer, probably his best game that we've seen in a long time. So he kind of answered some of the critics and probably showed his quality. And it's good to see players lose form. And when you have a competitive squad, I was in a back row situation before where guys ahead of me weren't playing that well, and you're fuming. You want to get in, you want to play, and you know, you get a chance, then you've got to take it. And he showed last week how good a player he is and how important he is. But the flip side of that for that duel with CJ Stander is that Stander brought a magnificent performance last week. But look, it is what it is. It's just a shame that unfortunately he was getting another crack this week at number 8, and CJ Stander was gone to 6 because Peter O'Mahony didn't train at the start of the week, and it was probably a sensible thing to do, you think, on the balance of it. But then he pulls out Jack Conan and O'Mahony's kind of training, so he slipped back into the side. But look, he'll get a chance again.
Yeah, and then on top of that as well, the other, I think, notable selection, Rory Best, I was saying to Owen as well. Would you have been inclined to maybe just rest Rory Best and keep him on the subs bench for maybe 50, 60 minutes this weekend, given he played the full 80 last weekend against Scotland?
There's for and against. The majority of me thinks play him again, get another match. These guys will get sharper with matches, and you need matches, Neil. I think if you play, the way the kind of system works in Ireland now, you play 4 or 5 games and you get a match off, maybe 4. Some guys are less. The older guys maybe play 3 and get a week off. But there's nothing beats playing matches and getting sharper and sharper and sharper. And I think given what happened maybe in the English game and that kind of negativity for Rory Best, the set piece last week was brilliant. And I think for him to go out and have a good performance this week again and get those lineouts right, have the amount of involvement he had in the game, would be brilliant for him. The downside is your backup options are not getting those minutes under a belt, you know. So there's for and against, but he is your starting hooker. He is your first choice, and I think the message that Joe Schmidt is sending out is, I'm picking my strongest team available to me. And that's what he's done. So it's probably the right decision to start him. You know, I hope Sean Cronin gets off the bench and gets some time. And then maybe, you know, Niall Scannell maybe start next week, or Sean Cronin, and they'll, you know, he'll get a week off next week, maybe, Rory Best. And
then finally as well,
brilliant. He was brilliant, wasn't he? And it was great to see because he's had his critics, and I think he showed brilliant leadership. I think... look, it's a week and it's a few days to digest. Sometimes it takes me a few days to really digest it and kind of get a balance. They were fantastic, I thought, the way they managed the game. But there was opportunities that went, that they missed, and certain things in the game that, you know, in a quarter-final against the South African side, they will need to be better and sharper, and hopefully they can build on that.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit earlier as well defensively about the work that Jack Carty and Chris Farrell will probably have to do this weekend. Jacob Stockdale's role defensively is going to be very interesting this weekend because he's going to be lining up alongside Katara Matsushima, who really was the danger man for Japan last week against Russia. Anytime they got the ball out to him, like, they struggled so many times to get the ball out to him because of all the handling errors. But when they were able to get it wide like that, that's when they really looked dangerous. And given the way Ireland kind of defend a lot, where Jacob Stockdale is coming in and attacking players, you know, trying to maybe attack the outside centre and stop the ball getting out to the wing, it's a dangerous tactic to keep trying that again this week, because we saw it last week when Japan got the ball out there. He's absolutely lethal.
Well, Tony Brown, their assistant coach, said that to beat Ireland, they've got to play with speed and pace in their game and attack the wider channels. So Matsushima was incredible last week. I know it was against Russia, but I've seen him play before. He's a bullet. He pops up all over the field, and if you kick loosely to him, he can counter-attack. You've just got to be on the money. Lafalelli is a superb player in the centre as well, and Tupou on the wing, the other wing. A lot of trail runners. You know, they take the ball right to the line and they pull the pass back. And so I think, Ireland took so many steps forward last week, Neil, defensively, and that'd probably be the most disappointing thing for me if they let that standard drop. If they bring that same connectivity, so not just Jacob Stockdale, right across the team, they got to get the same line speed and stay connected, and just watch the danger of those pacey runners, because they can punish any team, and Matsushima is an absolute bullet, so they've got to be very, very wary. And I think for Jacob Stockdale, it's just getting the timing right. He got the timing right last week. He made good decisions, and that probably came down to good communication with guys on the inside as well, and Jordan Larmour, coming across behind him as full back, allowing him to go. So let's hope he can do the same again this week and in the next couple of weeks, because I think that's probably the only flaw in his game sometimes, that he maybe shoots out of the line too quickly, and when you do that, you've got to get man on ball.
Mm-hmm. And finally then, Quinny, what's the call for the weekend?
I'm finding it hard to pick a scoreline. I think we'll win. I think we're 15, 20 points better side.
Bonus point win?
Yeah, I think we can get the bonus points, yeah, for sure. And I think, look, there's no point in hiding behind the fact that we produced a brilliant performance, and we can beat anybody in our day. And that's the kind of standard we have to strive to get to if we want to make the latter part stages of this competition. So there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't go for a bonus point on Saturday, and I think they'll get the bonus point win. But caution, these guys were able to score tries, there's no doubt about that, the Japanese. So we've got to be careful with the way we play. You've got to manage the tempo of the game, and if they're 4 maul tries, I don't mind, or pushover tries from a scrum, but I just think I would love to see a real kind of energy, aggression and intensity again, because like I said, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind the Japanese will be flying out of the blocks, and they'll be trying to smash the Irish guys on Saturday.
Quinny, that's great. Thanks a million for joining us, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again next week.
Cheers, Neil. Thanks.
Alan Quinlan there, live from Japan, looking ahead to Ireland against Japan this Saturday in the Rugby World Cup. That's almost time for us to leave, though. Before we go, just a few more little bits of housekeeping and a few more latest bits of news to bring you up to date with, because in some other Rugby World Cup news, the fallout is continuing following Rhys Hodges' 3-week ban for his tackle on Fiji's Paseli Yato on Saturday last. He was cited on Sunday and is now going to miss Australia's crunch games against Wales on Sunday, as well as the matches against Uruguay and Georgia. So the rest of their pool campaign. He was given a 6-week ban reduced to 3. But the interesting thing is that this afternoon, this decision was made yesterday, his ban. This afternoon, it was confirmed the full decision hearing, the full hearing decision was put up online. You can go and read it if you want. You'll be able to find it on Twitter on World Rugby's database. But a couple of interesting lines here in that disciplinary hearing. He conceded he was not in a good position to affect the tackle he attempted. He said that his actions were very reactionary, that everything happened so quickly that he had never had an occurrence like this happen to him before, i.e. trying to tackle in such a situation, and that he had no technique to fall back on. The player conceded that he had no effective knowledge of World Rugby's decision-making framework for high tackles, had not been trained on it, was not across it, because the tackles he makes are predominantly in the waist to knees area. And in brackets then it says, to the panel, this was of some general concern. And that is definitely the case, because World Rugby have been hammering this decision-making framework for high tackles right down at us for months now. And it's something that everyone knew was going to be an issue. So it would be very, very concerning if this is an example where, the Australian Rugby Union are not keeping their players informed about, the decision-making framework and how high tackles are refereed now, and this step-by-step guideline, to put in the mitigating factors and working your way towards, is this a yellow or red card? So I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about that as well over the coming days. Also as well, Argentina made 4 changes for their Pool C game against Tonga at the Hanazono Rugby Stadium on Saturday. Fly half Benjamin Urdapaleta, winger Santiago Carreras, hooker Julian Montoya, and number 8 Thomas Lozana come into the team. Nicolas Sanchez, Augusto Justin Creevy and Javier Ortego Decio moved to the bench. Ramiro Moyano started on the wing in Argentina's defeat against France, drops out of the matchday 23, and also out is Juan Manuel Leguizamon, who has to wait at least another week if he wants to equal Felipe Contepomi's Pumas record of 87 caps. Argentina really have to win their way through the remaining games, and England as well over the coming weeks, if they are to make it through to the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup after their defeat to France. And speaking of England as well, second half about to get underway in their game against the USA. They now lead 19-0. George Ford, Billy Vunipola and Luke Cowan-Dickey with the tries. Vunipola and Cowan-Dickey's both from really strong rolling mauls, so it seems that England going back to basics after flattering at times trying to run the ball a lot against Tonga at the weekend. George Ford adding 2 conversions, so they are now 19-0 in front. And that's where we leave you for this afternoon's Rugby World Cup show on offtheball.com. We will be back this coming Saturday to look back on Ireland's hopeful win, we will say, against Japan, their game against Japan in the Rugby World Cup this Saturday. Coming up tomorrow on OTBAM, Andy Dunn is going to be in studio with the lads to look ahead to that game as well. And across Saturday and Sunday on all of our Off the Ball platforms, we'll have tons of rugby content to keep you up to date with. That's it for now, though. We'll speak to you again soon.